Hello, I'm FBX and I've run my fair share of political Minecraft servers on this channel, everything from communism to monarchy and everything in between, and the big questions we sometimes receive is which is the best way to run a Minecraft server, Toycat, and the truth is, because they were all run at slightly different times, there's no real way to be certain about that, except maybe there is, because these videos are watched by people from all across the political spectrum, all across the political compass. I've divided this world into 4 sections, one for each of the 4 corners of the traditional political compass, and we are going to allow people to choose a side which they're then going to be locked into, and we're going to see which of the 4 corners succeeds. I have divided my traditional old style Minecraft world, that's a 256 by 256 world, into 4 different sections of 128 by 128 each. This is for each of the 4 corners of the traditional political compass. So we've got ourselves authoritarian left over here in red, we've got authoritarian right, we've got anarchist left, and we've got anarchist right. And of course, each of the 4 sections is going to be divided off entirely from the others to allow them to kind of self-sustain and work out separately. And the way we're going to be running this is we're going to have anarchist right be deliberately on the side of the world which has a Minecraft village. I mean, they love their trading, and believe me, they can get rich from this if they want to. So anarchist right has a Minecraft village. Authoritarian right, I mean, you know, what would they like most? I think it's quite clear. Let's be real, the thing they enjoy most is if we made it as white as we can. So obviously, when you look at history, you can tell that authoritarian left loves their communal farm. So we built them a nice big one of those. And also, authoritarian left loves to have their giant pits in the ground to push people in when they mess up. Obviously, anarchist left really loves green. I mean, it's literally even their color on the political spectrum. So what we're going to do is we're going to give them a nice green shulker box, which will fill with all of the plant life that exists in the game, including the ones not elsewhere found on this map. So yeah, they get lots of plants as their nice thing, because don't you love being green? Actually, we'll give them a few shulker boxes in this as well. There you go. Okay, so next, to stop the 4 quadrants from interfering with each other, I have now divided the world into 4, and I've divided it not just with this 1 thick wide gap that you're seeing right now, I've divided it with barrier blocks. So this is what it actually looks like, but because no one is holding the barrier block, they can just see a big invisible wall which you cannot physically get past except from the spawn area where you first choose whether to go down to, again, authoritarian, to left, right, so you get to pick whichever one you go to. So the server is now open to the public, and anyone can join and pick one of the 4 sides which they can go over towards. The only rule is they can't come back and try and pick another team, because as we all know, once you pick an extreme, you're on their team for as long as they deem it necessary. Anyway, so the key thing about this is because it's all based on players picking their own team and deciding to enforce that however they want, I'm curious as to which side does the best on one level, but I'm also curious as to which side is picked the most. I would hazard a guess that more people on the internet are, you know, going to be libertarian left or anarchist left and anarchist right than would perhaps be authoritarian right, but we're curious to see. Maybe people just meme around and everyone becomes, you know, authoritarian left just because of the communism memes. I have yet to see how this will go, but the server's open. Let's see who joins. So we have our first user on here, it's Alllight Pampano. I'm curious to see which of the 4 sides he goes towards. Oh, he's going authoritarian right. I mean, apparently I am entirely wrong when it comes to how I assume people will play this game. What is this Minecraft skin? Is this Alex but with giant eyes? How did they just blink? What is this ungodly creation they have made? So we've already got someone trying to start the 4th Reich. That's why they want authoritarian right, and we'll see if that works out for them. It seems as though that is just the popular position with Minecraft players. I hate this skin so much. You've got to stop doing this to be friend. So yeah, we now also have 2 anarchist lefts. Again, it seems pretty perfect that we have perfectly diametrically opposed people. 2 over there in authoritarian right, and 2 over here in anarchist left. And everything else is empty so far, but maybe JJ wants to start the Soviet Union. So we now have someone in the authoritarian left as well, and which means that after the people left from the initial, my guess about everyone going here was races. They've got something that looks, again, concerningly like a camp, but they assure me has great intentions. It's authoritarian right that is just nailing it with the organization, while anarchist left looks exactly how it did 12 hours ago. And you know, maybe that's beautiful, maybe that's not. But yeah, it really does just go to show that, like, exact opposite ideologies have exact opposite results by the end of day 1, but there are many other days in this experiment, and let's keep it going and see how that one rolls out. Because you can see how libertarian right's just been taking apart each other's houses to get build materials. Like, fair enough, but also many questions there. So I find it fascinating when you look at this right here, because the authoritarian right, the blue team, have decided to cover their map in water, which makes sense when you think about it on the side of like, oh yeah, they're the blue team, I guess, but it makes way less sense because, I mean, in my experience, most hardcore conservatives didn't believe in global warming, but here we have it happening in practice, but only on their side of the map, which I find kind of amusing. You can even see right here how like, oh yeah, there's a big difference between the water level for them and the water level for everyone else. So, sure, I guess. And just as expected, we've got some of the anarchists left just giving away food for free, not even charging me for it. I mean, how do they expect to stimulate the economy? So right now, we only have one authoritarian left person in the world, and they're just making the world a better place. Even though there's no one else there, they still care about the collective good, so they're gonna tunnel away at this giant mountain by hand, if that's what it takes to make an area to build a collective commune on. I just feel like they're making arses of themselves. Maybe I'm wrong. You get it? Because arse. I'm funny. Well, you know what? I should have expected that to start happening, shouldn't I? Apparently, Toycat is making a Toycat sign out of dirt and then immediately leaving the game. Although maybe they don't leave, maybe they starved. Or the food seems to have run out. Well, you know what? Pretty accurate. That's communism. No players left. Let's see how the other three sides are doing, though. The only side of note is probably anarchists left, because they at least have a house going on that they've built themselves. Because, I mean, at least this house was built by somebody, it's not flooded, it gives me the ability to be who I want to be, you know, I can express my own identity in the world, which is beautiful, but then also you can see we've decided to go for the other thing that totally represents anarchist left. We've got a weed store going on, because why not, I guess? Also, 11 tax. That is the tax rate I choose, 11. For sure. Okay, so something that really blows my mind is they've managed to get an actual pillager raid going. I didn't know pillagers would spawn on servers, and especially one this tiny, but apparently that's a thing. Speaking of totems, they've also made a totem to wealth and might, apparently. I mean, seems about right for anarchist, right? And also we've seen a lovely place for a cuppa, which I mean, I like this. It's a house in the sky right below the barrier block ceiling. To stop them climbing over, by the way. But it's not just anarchist right that's doing well. If we look over at anarchist left, you can see how they are seriously... Okay, wait. What was that? What did I just see? But they are doing seriously well as well. They've not only made themselves a cat house... Maybe it's a dog house, honestly. It looks a bit more like a dog, doesn't it? But they made themselves this thing that technically exists. The people's cat. I tried, but did not succeed. It's the people's dog now, that is the official name. They've started a cactus farm, as well as a mine down to Bedrock, although typical anarchist left, they got bored halfway through, and instead went back to the weed shop to focus on improving that, it seems. They've also made a sign saying, "Our capitalism friends." They spelled R wrong, but we'll give them a pass on that. And on the other side it says, "Hey, hey, friends." Oh, that's cute. They've, they're having a little conversation via these boards, because again, they can't get in contact with the other teams, so it's very odd, like, I guess besides signs like this, and isn't that cute? Meanwhile, you can see that authoritarian right has suspiciously only been growing the whitest of trees, literally everywhere too, by the way, and even there's a big white house here, which if we look inside, you know, you're gonna be shocked by this, but it seems as though it's got a white bed. Also, Hollow Knight is a good game. Wouldn't associate these two things together, but sure. They've got a nice little house for themselves, and they seem to be cooperating fairly well. Although again, when you look at the skins of the people playing, it makes sense why. Meanwhile, the authoritarian left has built a wall to keep the filthy capitalists out. I mean, they don't realize there's a wall there, but let's not talk about that. And also they built a giant red flag because, I mean, the biggest red flag that I can imagine is someone being on the Team Communist, am I right? Haha. But no, you can see how they're living inside the mountain, it seems. Wait, where were they? They were here a second ago. You can also see how the Gulag looks significantly more pleasant because, as we all know, it's not the content of a man's heart that matters, it's entirely what's on the outside, and this is definitely taking that to its extreme, it seems. So after a great early start, the authoritarian right has sadly been pretty much stagnant. I mean, demographic change has meant there's pretty much no one here. I mean, like real life again. And you can see how everyone else is pretty much clustered around the communist team, which is doing very good all of a sudden. And obviously the anarchist left and the anarchist right. I feel like anarchist left had a really cool idea going on, but they've mostly kind of abandoned it. It's like a cool toy cat logo. It's a nice cat made from redstone. redstone, don't get me wrong, but otherwise this place is pretty much just like, oh yeah, have anarchy, do what you want. They haven't really built many impressive things, whereas the, you know, the opposite side of things, the authoritarian left, they've been doing some amazing things together. I mean, they made a beacon, they made it out of furnaces, but still, that's pretty cool, right? The People's Pyramid, as they call it, and also Gamer Girl Bathwater. They've got lots of cool things going down here because they work together and they get the things done. Sure, they have to conscript people against their will to do so, but I mean, they get them to do it for great projects. However, on the opposite side of things, we have Anarchist Right, which instead of forcing people against their will, seems to let people do whatever they want. I mean, as long as they name a price, right? I mean, as long as you want to do it, or as long as someone will pay you to do it, it's entirely okay over here, and that's why they've built a giant wall to separate themselves from the other side. I mean, apparently that's something that the authoritarian left and the anarchist right have in common. They have walls where they want to keep people who aren't the good people out, except, in this case, the good people are the non-payers. Whereas in that case, I'd imagine the walls are actually there for the specific payers, but whole different point, whole separate time. Apparently the anarchist right and the authoritarian left have walls as a thing in common. I mean, they both want to keep people out that don't follow the same beliefs. Although in this case it'd be keeping people who don't want to pay out, whereas in that case it'd be keeping the capitalists out. In other words, the people who are willing to pay. So isn't that a beautiful little difference right there? So yeah, besides building walls, which is something all the sides are doing to some extent, it seems, you can also see how, like, oh yeah, there is some really nice purple block building going on right here. Come on over here, taking our job apparently. We still have the situation where people are just stealing villager houses and claiming them as their own, but I mean, like, they're making them nice and purple, so sure, I guess that's how that be. And yeah, it seems as though all the native villagers have been driven off the land, so that's a thing, I guess. But besides the death of the native population, besides the extreme stripping of their resources, you can see how everything else is going really well so far, and I love that for the anarchist right. So yeah, things are going pretty well. I'm about to head out for the evening, and we'll see how that affects things. I'm not sure I see the symbolism, but it seems as though the communists are building a giant pixel art of Squidward from SpongeBob. So the guess I originally made that everyone would go over to the green side because that's how the internet be seems to have turned out entirely correctly, at least at one point. I mean, look at this spread of players right here. There's one guy down in the bottom right over in purple team, maybe a second person. There's one person over in Communististan over here, and then besides that, it's just all over there in bottom left. And in fact, bottom left seems to be the best organized of the side, maybe because they got the people on their team, or maybe they're just doing the best job because no one's forced to do anything and they're all living this collective great society which has produced many wonderful things. I mean, this cat is a bit of a mess, although it is in the flag colors they're going for. I mean, this cat is beautiful though, and most impressively of all, the green side is the first one to have a giant flag on the map. As you can see, they built this thing out of coal blocks and redstone, a huge undertaking by the way. A huge undertaking where they didn't even want credit, they just said, oh yeah, this was built by the people, this was, and this is seriously impressive given the amount of resources that had to be mined from underneath the world. And you know, there's only so much redstone that can be found in the world, and I think you know, a decent majority of their portion of it is found right here. So as well as that, you can see how there's a nice few flags over the rest of the place, and also they've got some good collective farming. They've even got a collective, you know, bone meal machine. It's not very often you see an automated composter, but on this server, they've got this going. So green side seems to be doing the best so far. I'd say purple, or anarchist right, seems to be doing a nice enough job too. There's a lot of just messes that people make and no one really bothers with cleaning up. They're just like, we'll get to that later, that you can see right here. But they have at the same time made some really nice roads. I mean, there's a charge to use them, but besides that, wonderful roads. A really nice wall with even this nice purple banner around it. Again, they have defined the inside and the outside of their world where capitalism reigns free, and that is real nice. There's even a giant host store, it seems. I mean, again, they're really developing the social side of this whole thing, and yeah, everyone lives in their own little cabins which are very, very far away from one another. Again, there's two anarchist sides right here, and you can see over there they've got like the people's house, like everyone kind of shares houses and stuff. They've got some nice stuff built all over the place, whereas here everyone has their own little cabin that they deliberately keep as far away from everyone else's cabins as they humanly can, which is nice. I mean, even despite that fact though, the food system is still based on a donation system, so that's working out for them. Again, you can have capitalism that can be kind according to this part of the server. Never mind. The sheep farm proves this one wrong. They violated the non-aggression policy. You gotta protect your private property better. I mean, there was two bits of communal property. There was the food hub and there was the sheep place, and the sheep have all been let out or killed, it seems. Actually, is there food left in the food hub? I guess we should check. this is not food. Communists have done some really big, impressive stuff. In terms of the scale of the things that they built, this is the most impressive. But in terms of how it all combines together, I'd say it's like, I don't know so much about it. Again, like, there's some really grand things that took a lot of work from a lot of people here. As you can see clearly looking everywhere. There's even some form of church, I assume? Oh no, the People's Public Court. Where, of course, they have very fair, very legitimate trials that are definitely not to find enemies of the state. But you can see how they've got a nice, little public court there. They've got a nice toy cat ran by, okay, they've got a nice little store, company store, where you can buy some things there. We've got a lovely communist flag and even a hammer and sickle. But in terms of how the society interacts, it doesn't seem to work so well right now. Again, no one really has any nice houses, no one really has any grand projects besides the big public wall and the big... And it's definitely a society in its infantile stages, although again, it's hard to dislike the direction that they want to go in if they can do it correctly. But, you know, communism and doing things the way they intend to. Can you name a less iconic duo? And then finally, we've got this over here, the northeast, the blue side of the map right here. And as you can see, it is kind of abandoned. Like, it got flooded, global warming hit hard, and then it seems as though everyone abandoned ship. I mean, sure, they've got a holy church of Toy Cat. I mean, religion, very key part of keeping people together in these trying times. I mean, keeping people off the right color and building blocks together, that is. They built a cat that looks like it has a heart face. That's very cute. And we've also got a rustic home going on over here. But also, wait, what is this? It's just a board full of signs saying Toy Cat is yes. I guess it made more sense before they walled up their side of the barriers. But yeah, you can see how for the most part, they are doing the worst right now. Oh, look, they replaced the help sign with it now saying hype. But like, hell, hype. You know what? This is just bad and offensive. So yeah, I definitely feel like the authoritarian rights are definitely being destroyed by the other sides right now. By the way, I only just spotted it now, but it looks like someone stole the purple from the anarchist right thing and replaced it with wood. They're stripping off the assets of anything that is not clearly defined as theirs. It's quite impressive. I mean, private property is very important to these people, which is why they stole everything that belonged to the public. The village is so gone, by the way. Like, that was meant to be their advantage. They could trade the villagers. Like, their advantage was meant to be trading with the villagers, but instead stealing their houses was easier, I guess it turns out. So that's where this one was. So we are now over halfway done with the experiment. How are things looking so far? Well, immediately what comes to mind is that more players seem to be joining left than right overall. You definitely get influxes joining on anarchist right, and you get the occasional player going over to authoritarian right, which means that it's very well organized over there. But besides that, you can see that because there are more players on the left, or perhaps just because this is a thing you see everywhere all the time, the left side, whichever side it is, you know, anarchist left and also authoritarian left, both of these sides seem to have a lot of different ideas about how they should be going on inside of them. So over here you can see there's just so many buildings all overlapping with each other. Everyone's like vaguely respecting each other's space, but also not in actual aesthetic style. So the flag has a pyramid coming off it. There's a giant manga sponge next to this giant skyscraper someone built, which is next to another skyscraper, which is next to other skyscrapers, which are next to a Toy Cat statue. You can see just how big and messy this side is. I mean, it does about hold together right now, though. I mean, they still are arguably the best side in terms of the total builds. It's just they're really starting to clash with each other, and no one really cares too much about that. Because on this side, no one's truly correct. All the ideas just kind of stack on top of each other, and people might say that other ideas are worse than their ideas, and therefore not truly deserving of being on this side. But I feel like the slightly better organized version of this, but having the same problems, is going to be authoritarian left. Or just, they call themselves just the communists at this point, right? Like, I don't know how they even changed the sign, but you can see how, like, oh yeah, if we go over to communism, you can see how, like, everything is very, it's a well-structured base, but then on top of that, there's a few different groups kind of combined on here. Some people don't realize that, like, this thing, I assume it's a rainbow flag, a very bad one. The flag of unity. You made us divide us, but we'll still unity under the god Toy Cat. I mean, also the sheep of unity. It's a green sheep to represent solidarity with their brothers down there. Because let's be honest, even though they're really different ideologies, it seems they kind of see it like, they're the same. They're just communists that don't realize that they want the government doing it all yet. Which is interesting enough because there's a giant Walter Burney here, it looks like. I mean, why is there a Walter Burney? That's a question on the, the communist side. I mean, I guess if you put him in there by force, that would be hashtag real communism. But otherwise, I think this is like a bit of an overreach, but maybe they're going by American standards of political compass. I don't know for sure. Red side is the best side. We've still got a little cat. We've still got the, the farm, which we started with, but it's been growing massively. As you can see, it's 2 levels right now. The amount of food they are producing is definitely the highest because sure, they force some people to work on the farms from time to time. Sure, it's one of the prerequisites before you can build anything else here. But I mean, does it not get results? Definitely more than the results down there. So yeah, you get much fewer impressive builds for an individual person to make. Like, this is a shack. I don't know why they think they can... Oh, I thought it was one person's hut. But, like, you can see how, like, yeah, no personal property allowed right here. So there's no, like, great personal projects. But when they combine together on a project, like, these are legitimate diamonds they've put in the eyes right here. It makes the cat look slightly nicer, right? Which is the real goal. When they combine to make things like this floating tree, which you can just do by removing the dirt underneath it, it's really cool, right? This society, which... there's so many dumb things going on here. This little, part of society is doing pretty well. While the authoritarian right is mostly an underutilized side of the map, but when people come here, they seem to actually do a pretty good job of building things, destroying the things that need to be destroyed, i.e. the non-pure things, and then working on bigger, better projects in their place. You can see this nice little skyscraper going on right here. But yeah, as you can see, this side is definitely the best organized, if not the most impressive. They've moved up to 3rd place, I would say, so far. Also, they did something kind of nice. You know, people have their disagreements with these guys right here, it does seem, but they've got themselves this nice little center for diplomatic relations. All the other sides are just like being mean to each other via these signs, but this side's got themselves a nice little embassy. They've got some diplomatic relations they want to set up. Look how great this is. That is the authoritarians showing people how to do statecraft right. We've got Anarchist Right, which I think has definitely gone downhill since the last time we checked them out. As you can see, Ancapistan and the houses. As you can see, this guy called Tempest said, "Please don't grief, I made free food farm, by the way." But that doesn't matter to the guy who griefed his house regardless. I don't know if I find that beautiful or not, but I mean, it is something, right? It is something. But yeah, you can see how looking around the rest of this side, it mostly is the same kind of message of like, oh yeah, there are a few public projects that mostly are neglected. Everyone is doing their own different thing, and then people steal from each other's own different things. Like, you know that nice, place for a copper in the sky? It's gone. You know that nice sheep farm that everyone destroyed? Somehow a version of it came back with green and blue wool. I guess they got green wool from cactuses, and then I guess they got blue wool from lapis lazuli down below the ground. So now they've got green and blue, which is super interesting. And worst of all, the reason they're really getting offensive is because they've written /kill Toycat on the wall, and I find that deeply, deeply offensive. So yeah, I'm hoping this side gets some improvements going on. They built a wall, don't get me wrong, but overall, it definitely looks like Anarchist Left is where most of the people left is going, and it could go seriously wrong. So I found one of my favorite things on the server over here on the Anarchist Left, because you know what, some people don't agree with all the infighting that's gone on. They want to get away from that, and so it's something very clever I found that, again, I wouldn't reveal their secrets if this video wasn't going out till the end of the week. You can see how this house right here, it's super nondescript. There's no signs, there's no amazing loot to steal. It's just a house that no one should want to bother, because it's not good enough to really worth be bothering with. But if you mine down the back right here, and just get a few blocks out from the back of the house, and then go along the border of the world, there's a little ladder right here, and this ladder will take you to a nice little secret base. And I think that's beautiful right here. That you can, because on old size worlds, you can just kind of see a nice view out there. You can see what's happening. And at the same time, you can have this super underground bunker, which again, I'm really loving. There's some chickens growing down here. There's a campfire. There's, honestly, I'm not really sure what the rest of this is needed for. But I love that, like, when the world ends, as inevitably they are ready for, Miss Anti-Terrorist will be her with chickens. Although you've got to hand it to the communists, Supreme Leader Toycat, I gift you this mansion. It's a nice mansion that has windows as infinite as our Supreme Leader's compassion. I love that. I find that beautiful. I don't know what the weird bug is with looking at the world through them, but I love that they're keeping an eye on the authoritarians, their mortal enemies over there. I think that's kind of nice. So, welcome back to day 6 of the Political Compass server, and so far things are definitely going pretty well, but the question of which team is doing the best is one I can't answer, but I can answer which team is doing the worst, and sadly it is Anarchist Right. Anarchist Right, as you can see by looking at it, has improved the least over the last 24 hours. Sure, there are some slight changes, but their big advantage of having the village to trade with was immediately lost. The village buildings themselves seem to have been near immediately lost, and although there is a nice pathway that links around, I mean, They definitely have the nicest roads of anywhere, and that's what happens when you make people pay for the roads rather than the government, it seems. Otherwise, it seems as though this side is pretty in some ways, but it just isn't really. The truth is, there just isn't an incentive to destroy ugly projects like this thing, or like this, as another example. On the anarchist side of the world, which you'll see, the anarchist left struggles with as well. I mean, look at that cube, it's such a mess. Look at that skyscraper, it's not owned by anyone. There's another skyscraper next to the Toy Cat statue. There's a house in the sky, there's half of the word yes. There's so much mess going on this side of the world, a mess which the authoritarians don't have to deal with. Because thankfully, the authoritarian right has finally removed those signs that represent Germany between 1939 to 1945. No, we will not be saying what it is. And they replaced it with the word Brexit in giant letters, which, I mean, it's an improvement, I guess, over that, you can say for sure. You can also see how, like, oh yeah, they've started to actually get some farms going, some very efficient, managed from the top down farms, you could say. And yeah, you can also see how they've got a little road system going on. But again, it's nowhere near as efficient or big because of the global warming problem, which no one's dealing with or fixing. They're still not acknowledging it, it seems. I mean, it's funny because this is the one side of the world that has global warming, and even then it seems like it's still being denied on some level, where they're just like, you know, we'll just pretend the water's not there. That's our solution, even as it literally screams for help. But yeah, that's how this is. So yeah, there is a rather nice you know, side happening right here. It definitely seems to have fewer players, and that seems to be stunting its development. Whereas on the other hand, if you look at the authoritarian left, they've done a really good job. First of all, you immediately start with a red bed, so your spawn is set because you cannot go to another side. It's been, you know, power has been seized in a coup by Commander Y, it seems. Someone you might recognize from live streams. But he has seized the realm, glory to the motherland, and even set up a bunch of very nice rules that everyone can follow, and it's very nice, right? Like, if you want to be a red, you've just got to not leave the state. Again, following, you know, red states very well. Respect your fellow reds. Also, nothing belongs to you or anyone for that matter. There's no personal property for anyone except Commander Y, that is. But, yeah, as you can see, this side of the world is definitely the most organized. It's very cramped in some areas, admittedly. There are some, you know, peasant areas, and there's some areas with the less desirable people, according to the USSR, and you can see they live very close to one another, but they do have collective food supplies that put the anarchist side to shame, by the way. Also, they need loyalty on these hoes. I love that joke. But it turns out that since I last looked, they ran out of food and everyone's kind of starving right now. Although there is Toy Cat wearing a black suit right here, so you can't hate this world too much. So, yeah, that seems to be the authoritarian right. They've done a really good job in building their side out from the rest of it. They've done an amazing job at, you know, putting it all together so far, and the wheat farm just grows every single day because that is the primary objective they have here. They have built a world now, and now they will build carrot farms, wheat farms, and even though these take up like half of their world, they think it's worthwhile to feed the people, as long as those people aren't in this particular embassy. That is a historically accurate comment, by the way. But yeah, the sides are definitely sticking to what you might expect, which is actually surprising. There was no rule saying they had to do that, but the communist side has giant red flags everywhere and is becoming a farming utopia. The anarchist sides have both gone into anarchy, different forms of anarchy, you can actually very clearly see that. And then the one side, which is a bit more of a puzzle, is authoritarian right. The authoritarian right seems to be very, very different to the other sides in so many ways, but it almost seems to be working out for them now because they finally united together. They're going for like this true blue kind of thing, where blue's their theme, where they've got very few builds, but they seem to be of a higher quality individually, or maybe it just looks that way because there's fewer of them. Because as much as you like your individual build, when they all clash and mess over each other, they all look worse by comparison, just because they look as bad as the worst build there. But when there are very few builds that are always being destroyed, as you can see literally right now, and being replaced with things, you tend to let the best things rise to the top. At least that seems to be what's happening on Team Capitalism over here, and we'll see if it works out for them. So a week has now passed. The reason we use a week as our barometer for these experiments is because it gives a fair balance over all of the different days in a week, and hundreds of players have now joined, left their mark on one of the four sides, but which of the four sides has done the best? Let's give you the recap over each and every single one of them. I think it's easiest to start with, you know, this side over here, the anarchist right, the, you know, the ANCAPs, the libertarians, whatever you want to call them. There's a lot of different terminologies for this portion of the political compass, but they all banded together to build a society that was based on capitalism, that was based on freedom, and most importantly, based on the, you know, anarchism, the ability not to have some controlling force behind it. And that act for controlling force is actually surprisingly pretty good. You can see in a fair few places around here that, like, actually, things are, you know, like mostly okay. Even though this is every nightmare of a, you know, Minecraft server in some way, the freedom aspect, the truth is because everyone here was trying to prove some point, because everyone wanted to make their, you know, great builds more than they wanted to destroy everyone else's, it seemed to work out for them. Sure, there were a few griefing incidents over the course of the week, I imagine. I mean, all the sheep were killed by someone. Did it happen again, by the way? It did. Protect your private property better. You know, some people did obviously attack other stuff for their own gain, but for the most part, people just made it not worth their while to go looking around raiding resources. You make your house good, but not so good that other people are willing to steal it, because people will come and eat you in that case, as people do know. So that is the anarchist right, a pretty good side in terms of just how cohesive it stayed all week, but one of the ones that's the exact opposite would be the anarchist left. Again, there should be so many similarities between these two. No central planning, no real you know, governmental structures, nothing really there besides we all unite behind one banner, except in this case it was we unite behind a lot of banners depending on which particular version of this banner we do believe in, because again, the you know, the left does not unite. It is a well-known fact, especially on this side of things. So yeah, there's a lot of red and black flags, but there's a lot of other flags flown around here depending on the particular user's interface. In fact, this is the least unified side, which makes sense. Most of the people ended up here, but because they never really united under one flag, one banner, it ended up just being a mess of lots of collective competing ideas. I mean, some people wanted to build apartments, but no one actually, you know, used any of those apartments for actual Minecraft houses. I mean, people put the stuff in there, but no one wants to take someone else's apartment. So they put all that effort in, and it led to nothing. We have this right here, this giant cube of griefing, but all it really resulted in was a little bit of a carrot farm in the sky. It's not efficient as a carrot farm. It's not efficient as a particularly pretty build. It's a nice mega cube. I love the mathematical proportions, sure, but in terms of actually being anything else, it wasn't so great. Sure, I mean, very few people griefed each other, and you know, that is something that's kind of impressive. Like, the red and black flags stayed here all week, and so did this granite pyramid and the giant toy cat statue. But for the most part, very few people cooperated on much more, you know, much going on this server. I mean, look at this guy, for instance. They built themselves a piston, you know, thing like this, which actually works by just, you know, it's a sugarcane farm with just one sugarcane. And, I mean, like, fair enough, I guess. It seems to be working out for them. But the number of weird, wacky individual ideas here that came together to be something that never really unified under any banner, that never really, you know, became the most powerful thing. The number of different ideas we have here that are all competing with each other means that even though in theory this should be the best side, this should be the side which has the most time, the most manpower, the most resources, the one that dominates all of the other ones, the reality is I'm not too sure that is what has actually happened here. What I think has happened instead is we have a collection of beliefs that together are most powerful, but within themselves have divided into lots of different factions, none of which is more powerful, especially when you compare it to the other leftist faction. Because the authoritarian left, obviously, you know, united under one leader. Sure, it was a little bit authoritarian. I mean, it was literally, you know, Commander Y leading a coup and taking command of this team for themselves, but people accepted the coup. People accepted that, okay, one person tells us all what to do now. Does that one person tell us that we work on a giant stone structure? It seems like people listen to that. Seriously, look at this map. The entirety of the world that they were able to has been filled in with cobblestone, as well as some dirt in some places and torches. It's been filled in to the max, by the way, that they pretty much can have done. It's insane to look at right here. The amount of like work they can do, the amount of human accomplishment that can be pulled off right here is insane to look at, right? And that's what gets done when you force people to build for the God Emperor. You know, you might take away people's individual autonomy, but the end result is something that's actually pretty good. So, yeah, the fact that there is so much in this world, the fact that they managed to double their building space just by making a, you know, like a second layer of it is really darn impressive, right? They've still got the insane farms, they've still got the People's Council, they've still got the weirdest monuments around here. And overall, in terms of the sheer number of builds and good builds under one banner that actually cohesively fit together, I think it might be the authoritarian left. But you know what? The authoritarian right has something to say about that. I mean, sure, these two sides agree that the people need to be oppressed. It's just that, you know, under communism, everyone's oppressed equally. And under, you know, this system, only they you know, they are oppressed the most. And yeah, actually no one knows they, it depends on which system you're following, but an unequal amount of oppression is what was agreed on over here, and they have made the nicest flag, the clearest flag of any of the sides. I mean, that tiny Irish flag right there, I don't know how that's an Ancapi flag, who knows, you know, is something. The flag which shows on the map is real nice, but in real life it looks awful. This is just a nice flag that looks good on the map. They've got like a Nordic cross thing going on right here, because everyone knows the Nordic countries are the good ones in some ways. We got a few Brexit signs. A help sign, or hype, has been, you know, kind of improved right there. And you can see, looking around the rest of this, that, like, yeah, there were a few very strange individual ideas that came together. Some of these people love some Nordic Scandinavian countries. Some of them just like uniting under a banner of blue. And some people just think a command structure is the best way to keep people together. But the truth is that this little society might be the best for its size, because, you know, it didn't fracture over the entire week. It wasn't a lot of competing ideas. I'd argue the creating global warming was the weirdest thing I've ever seen, but they adapted to global warming surprisingly well. Again, not necessarily accurate to real life. And overall, I'd say this is the nicest for the size that it is. But as far as nicest overall, that definitely has to go to one of these other teams, right? I mean, which one of these three is it that you're going to say is one? That is actually where I'm going to say this is a lot like politics. I think I'd be willing to bet, you can leave your prediction in the comments down below, but I'd be willing to bet that people see different winners in this one depending on who they are. Which side is objectively the best of these four is honestly dependent on your thoughts. If you think that a good, you know, build or a good world is one which has lots of things, some of which you like, some of which you don't, then sure, it's anarchist left. If you think a good world is really well organized, doesn't have too much clutter, keeps some of the natural scenarios, and also, you know, brings a lot of things together, then obviously it's authoritarian right. If you love a world which has a organized system between your plots, but otherwise people have their own little worlds and the space between it, again, nature here has been preserved wonderfully as well, then, you know, you can see anarchist right is great for that. And if you like a world which just goes balls to the wall in terms of how much it's building, in terms of the work that it puts in, you know, ignore the outcome and the prettiness of it, then authoritarian left has won that one instead. And that's why I put the question out to all of you. Just like politics, this one is not determined by what I think is the best, and I'm not gonna force you to have an opinion. Instead, we'll use democracy to decide this one, which I know it's not either of these two guys' favorite things. In fact, most of these extremes do not like democracy too much because it didn't result in their favor. But let's work out for sure who exactly is the winner of these four sides. So pick an extreme side, subscribe or unsubscribe, and that is all I tell you to do at the end of this video, which I hope you did all enjoy. Have a nice day, everyone. Goodbye. Okay, I've had this question for a while, because you always hear the phrase capitalist pig, but are pigs in fact capitalists? We're going to spawn a pig in and see which side it chooses. Will it go pro-capitalism, or will it go for the opposite of capitalism? The pig is making its decision right now. We can in fact legitimately say that you are capitalist pigs. Oh man, the pig is literally... We can in fact confirm pigs are capitalists.